Hello, beautiful teachers, and welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. I'm delighted to be here with you today to talk about all things to do with music teaching. And we're going to be talking about changes because as we record this live, it is a great time of year to be making changes in your studio. So I want to throw a few things out there that I think you should consider changing if you haven't already made these changes in your studio. But I would love to hear yours as well. So do add into the comments what changes you're considering right now, what changes you made recently that have worked out well for you. I want to let you know about a couple of things coming up as well, because this is our last show before summer break. And we have a few things happening during the summer that I want to make sure you know about. So first of all, we will have a webinar, a masterclass, like a live online class in August. This one is extra special. It's going to be called, my tentative title I think I'm going to stick with is Expert Teaching Tips for Pet Piano Pieces. Basically what I'm doing is inviting on several different guest expert teachers to share one intermediate piece that they love to teach, how they teach it, what they watch out for when a student is learning it, and their favorite things about that piece. So they're like their pet pieces that they love teaching. And we're going to have several guests on. I won't announce the names yet, but that's in August. So if you are not already following us on Instagram, we're at Colourful Keys. That's a really good place to keep in touch with us. Make sure you find out about upcoming events because we won't be announcing on YouTube since we don't have the live show during the summer. And you could also make sure you're subscribed to our emails, of course, and follow us on Facebook as well. But I think sometimes Instagram is almost more reliable if you are someone who checks Instagram regularly. I feel like because of the stories and stuff, it's maybe a bit more reliable that you definitely see our posts. So that's a good place to make sure you follow us as well. So yeah, that's in August. We also have a lot of things happening in the membership in August. So we have a new course coming out in August called It's one of our Piece Pointers course, and this is about Masterwork Classics level 1 to 2. So this is the first book in that series. If you're not familiar with Masterwork Classics, it's just a great selection of classical rep, the standard teaching rep. And in those courses, I go through each piece in an entire book and tell you about how I teach it, what I watch out for, practice suggestions I give to students, the kinds of things I do with students to introduce it or to polish it, or different little tips for each of those pieces. So I would say in this one, even if you don't plan on ever using that book, it will still be relevant to you because they're such go-to pieces that you may have them in other books or tend to use sheets off IMSLP for them or something like that. So if you're not already a member, you can sign up at vibrantmusicteaching.com, and that's where that will be. So that'll be exclusive to members. The masterclass that I mentioned, the sign up isn't open yet, but if you watch out for it on social media and in your email inbox, if you're subscribed to all the places, you shouldn't miss it. And that will be free for non-members for a day to allow all the time zones to watch it. And then it will be in the membership on replay anytime anyone wants to watch it. In August, we will also have a new concept collection coming out. And today, as I record this is the 31st of May, 2023, if you're watching this later, today is the last day for members to download concept collection number 2. So these are fabulous books. I'm going to grab one second. This is number 2. This is the last day to get it. So if you're watching this live and you haven't already downloaded this, if you're a member, you haven't already downloaded it onto your computer and saved it somewhere safe, we can't give it to you later, okay? That's the deal, because it's several different composers coming together and it only works if we do it at limited time deal, because otherwise the copyright implications are just no. So we'd have to ask them to sign over copyright in perpetuity, and that would never work. So that's why they're limited edition. It's the only thing in the membership that is limited edition. It has a time limit on it, and you need to download it and save it, because even if you say, I was a member at that time, so I could have downloaded it, we can't send it to you later. Okay? Hope you understand that. Make sure you downloaded it. If you're not a member and you haven't, and you're thinking about signing up, today's a great day to do it, because you can make sure you get that before it expires. So if you've been thinking about it for a while, jump into the membership, grab that immediately. It's in the printable library. So you just click on library, printable library in the top menu once you're a member, and download it right away, and you'll get it before it expires, because if you become a member from tomorrow on, you won't get that one. But our newer one is coming up in August. And that is going to be enharmonics is the topic of that book. So I'm really excited about that one too. But again, we are taking June, July off from the concept collections just because it's a quieter time of year for teaching. So it's not the best time of year to release a new book like that. It's not really a time that a lot of teachers are looking for new material. So the next one will be coming out in August. And then following on from that in September, we will have our Piece Pointers course for Piano Safari 2 as well. Just wanted to mention that since I know a lot of members are particularly looking forward to that one, since we already have Piano Safari 1 in our Piece Pointers course. Piano Safari 2 is coming in September. So we'll have 2 Piece Pointers courses coming out like a month apart from each other to sort of kick off the new academic year in the Northern Hemisphere with just amazing tips and ways to teach pieces you perhaps already teach or are looking to get into teaching. I hope you're looking forward to some of these resources. During the summer in the membership, we still have our member huddles, by the way, as well. So those are the Zoom calls where we get members together and you go into a breakout room, so without me, and you chat with other members. So it's a really good informal way to catch up with teachers, check in with things. Maybe if over the summer you're feeling a bit like, oh, I'm not so certain, I don't have my normal network to rely on at this time of year, that's a great option as well. So I will still be running those. We do one every month. I should say we do 2 on one day at different times to give different time zones a chance. But one day every month I make sure to organize a huddle. So that's some of the fun stuff coming up. Now let's get into today's topic. So today we're talking about changes I think you should consider, particularly for your business side of your studio, which I know is not always the favorite topic among us teachers. Maybe we prefer talking about the pedagogy and the creative stuff and the fun things, but business is really important. And if you are someone that's a bit averse to it, it's what lets you have fun teaching. Because if you don't sort out your business stuff, if that's not all in place, you just spend all your time thinking about your business. So you won't get to have the fun of teaching. So let's dive into it. I want to hear what changes you are considering in your studio. So add those into the comments. There are things you're thinking about, changes you just made, changes you're just too chicken to make at the moment and are thinking about for next year. Let me know about them. As it's our last show before the summer break, I thought I'd do an extra little fun thing. And also because it's a business topic, I thought I'd make it more fun. And I'm going to give you hints. So we're going to do 5 changes. I'm going to give you just little Giphy type hints. It's supposed to be Jiffy, isn't it? Jiffy type hints. That just sounds like the cleaner. Anyone know Jif before it became Sif? Anyway, that's all Jif means to me. But I'm going to give you some hints, okay? So these are visual hints. They're very hard to guess, but you can have a go just for fun. So here's number 1. Any guesses what change I'm talking about there? Number 2. What on earth could this be? This is probably the hardest one to guess, I think. Number 3. Number 4. This might be a little bit easier to guess in some ways. By the way, does anyone like this show? And number 5. Again, very hard to guess this one, I think. The or in the background has nothing to do with anything. Okay, so those are the 5. See if you can guess them before I get to them, just for fun. Oh, and I should mention, you don't have to get a right answer for this, but I'm going to do a giveaway at the end as well today. So, if you are looking to win copies of our Piano Launchpad books, which are from our new course, and the hard copies are not usually available to anyone. This is just something I do as a special prize giveaway. I'm going to be giving away one of those at the end. All you have to do is comment during the video, because I'll be scrolling through the comments to pick someone, and be here at the end to say, yes, I'm here, when I call out your name. Okay, so let's continue with our changes. Here's number 1. Here's the clue again. And I'm delighted to say that Carrie got this right. Okay, makeup lessons. It's no surprise that I think this is something you should change if you're currently doing makeup lessons. If you haven't come across me before, though, you might not know that this is a particular soapbox, as Americans would say, of mine. So I think you should rethink reschedules. If you currently allow any reschedules at all, I take a pretty hard line on this, and I don't think you should do any. Okay, here's why. Number 1, if you currently have a policy that says, I require 24 hours notice for reschedules, or I will do makeup lessons, but only 1 per term, or 1 per month, or something like that, or only in the case, this is my least favorite, only in the case of sickness or emergency or something like that, only specific cases. Why do I hate those exceptions? Because all they do is blur the lines. And if you have some exceptions, what you're saying to people is, you do deserve a makeup lesson, you do deserve a reschedule if you can't make your regular lesson time, but I'm putting a limit on that. And that's actually a worse message than makeup lessons should not be part of the picture. That's what we want to get across. So why should they not? Because I think the biggest struggle with this is actually teachers believing that you shouldn't do makeup lessons, that it's not somehow unjust to parents or to students if you don't reschedule lessons. Because yes, every student, almost every single student, without question, is going to miss some of their lessons during the year. That's a fact. But let's step back and think about what they are paying you for. So what are they paying you for? Are they paying you for 30 minutes of your time or 45 minutes of your time a week? Or going further than that, are they paying you for whatever 45 minutes times 35 or however many lessons you do in a year is? Is that what they're paying you for? I don't think it is. This is not like a doctor's appointment where you get whatever they allow, something like 12 minutes or something ridiculously small, to see each individual patient. There you are paying them for that time. Yes, you're paying them for a result, but you call up, you schedule the appointment, you go in, and you're paying them for that time. If you cannot go to that time, you're not getting what you paid for. But in piano lessons, they are not paying you for 45 minutes times 36 lessons a year. They're paying you for a spot in your studio. And the spot in your studio includes you caring for their musical journey, you planning all of their lessons, keeping an eye on their progress, watching out for issues, all of the little things we do for each individual student. It also includes any extras you offer, like recital organization or festivals or any other extras if they don't pay extra for them. Even if they do, usually the preparation is something that they don't pay you extra for. It also includes anything else you offer in your studio, like a lending library or books you give out or anything like that. And it includes a weekly spot in your schedule. Not 45 minutes of your time, a weekly spot in your schedule. They are reserving 3:15 on Tuesdays. You can't give 3:15 on Tuesdays to anyone else. So that's what they're paying you for. And if you can really get your mind around that, I believe you can make this change without exceptions, because all the exceptions do is muddy the waters. There's two reasons teachers normally have the exceptions. Number one is, as I said, they don't believe that they shouldn't give makeup lessons. They just believe it's too hard to give as many as families expect, so they put a limit on it. And that's a very different message. Or they have previously done makeup lessons for every possible reason on every occasion under the sun, and they think it's too big of a leap to go to no reschedules, no makeups, no matter what. They think that's too far in one jump, even though they believe that's where they should end up. And if that's you, you are better off making the leap. I've seen this with so many different teachers, and yes, there may be some families that get upset with you, but if you just continually explain what the system is, give them options for what to do when they can't make a lesson, like a video lesson where they can send you a video and you'll comment on their progress during their regular lesson slot, because that's not giving them any extra. That's just keeping their 3:15 on a Tuesday slot and using it for them. That's fine. So you can come up with ways to cushion the blow, but they shouldn't be a maximum number of makeups, only in the case of illness, only in the case of this or that or whatever. Rethink your reschedules if you're currently doing them. And anyone who's watching live, could you, or even on the replay, could you comment if you have made this change? Because I think sometimes people don't believe me and they need to hear it from more teachers. So if you have moved from rescheduling lessons to never doing it, please comment and tell us how it went. Did you lose any students? Did something unexpected come out of it? Let us know what your experience was. Okay, here's number 2. The clue again. What could this possibly be? Did anyone guess it? Carrie just said number 2, no idea. Yeah, I don't think anyone guessed this. This one is my symbol for inflation. So we're talking about a rate raise. This is the second change I think you should consider, but honestly, this I'm even more hardline about. I'm even more definitive about than the moving to no reschedules things. There are some cases, especially if teachers need a lot of flexibility, where you might want to allow flexible reschedules because you need them, and that's a two-way street. Okay? But the rate raise thing, this year inflation is, in most countries, above 7%. If you do not raise your rates by at least 7%, you are making less next year than you currently make. And if you are currently swimming in the cash and thinking, I'm absolutely fine, I don't need any extra money anyway, then that's fine, maybe. Sort of. But I don't think many of us are in those shoes. So if you don't raise your rates right now, you're going to be making less money. And if you have never raised them for the past several years, you need to start raising them in slightly bigger chunks than inflation so that you catch up with where you were several years ago. Because inflation might be all the rage right now, but it always exists. It's usually just a lot smaller than it currently is. So if you don't raise your rates, and you haven't for several years, you are just making so much less. Now, I know this is scary. And I know it's tempting to say, oh, but everyone's hurting right now, and I care so much about my students, I don't want this to be what stands in their way of continuing to get their music education. And I hear you. I don't want students to have to quit because of financial reasons either. So if you have this ability, one thing you can do to, again, cushion this a little bit is to, in your rate increase email, in your email about your new rates, in which you will not over-explain why you're doing it. You won't even explain why you're doing it. You'll just announce new rates. But while you're doing that, you can remind people that you have a needs-based scholarship, if that's something you think you could provide. I prefer this way around rather than just waiting till someone complains and then rolling back, because if you specifically say that it's needs-based, families who are not really struggling, in my experience, won't push their luck. You know, they're going to know that if they say, oh, we need that scholarship, and they just bought a new Mercedes, that you're going to be like, huh? And they don't really do that. Whereas they might be the ones to complain about the rates. So putting that line in there might be helpful, something to consider. But no matter what, you should be raising your rates. You need to put up the fees. End of story. And the best way to do it is just say, here are the new fees for next term. Here's the link to sign up for lessons from September onwards, like to re-enroll in the studio. That's it. Don't explain. And then if someone comes back to you and says, what? Why has it gone up by this much? Or it looks like it's gone up by this much. Is that right? You just say, yes, those are the new fees for next term. And you just keep calmly stating the facts about the new fees. It's tough, but it has to be done. And if you get into this habit and start raising your rates every single year, it won't be a surprise to anyone. And you probably won't get any complaints, or very few. Okay, does anyone guess what this is? I don't think so. I think Carrie guessed it was going to be raising your rates, but actually that was the previous one. So this one is a bit more fun. Is that you should consider diversifying your lesson formats. So some of you may know that I teach several different formats in my studio, and I'm not trying to say you have to make your studio as complicated as mine, because we have quite a lot of different options. We have lessons at students' homes for different lesson lengths, and then we have solo lessons for different lesson lengths here, and then we have buddy lessons and 2 different types of group lessons, one for young kids and one for slightly older kids. That's a lot. But if you currently just teach one type of lessons, maybe you should consider bringing in a group class or buddy lessons or some other different format, especially if you're finding I can't raise my rates enough to make the money that I need to make from my business. And if that's where you're at, then diversifying can be really helpful because you can better leverage your time. You only have so much time in a week and you don't want to spend all of it working, which is what a lot of teachers default to. They're not making enough money, so they schedule more and more and more students until they completely burn out and saying making a full-time income from teaching is impossible. It's not impossible, but sometimes in certain markets, it does require you to explore different avenues. And if you've never done group teaching before, you don't necessarily need multiple instruments and a big piano lab. Okay? Our group curricula inside Vibrant Music Teaching, we have mini musicians, which is for preschoolers, and that one is just as many students as you want, like 4 to 8 students in a class with one piano. It's designed to work that way because everyone just explores together and watches each other, and that's how it works. It's all centered around the one piano. You actually don't want multiple pianos in that scenario. Like, we don't turn our second instrument on in our studio when we have mini musicians because we don't want chaos. If you are thinking about our older student curriculum, Piano Launchpad, which just came out recently, that needs a piano per every 2 students. So still, you can teach a class of 4 if you have 2 instruments. It's not as overwhelming what you need for a group class as you might think. You can start quite small, and it can just be 1 per week, but it might make a little bit of a difference, bring in some different styles of teaching for you and reinvigorate you, or inject a little bit of extra income if that's what you need in your studio. Okay, everyone knows what show this is from, right? There can't be anyone here who hasn't seen Parks and Rec. One of the greatest shows ever. Sorry, if you hate it, that's no problem. You don't need to like Parks and Rec to appreciate this next rule, or potential rule, which is about self-care. Now, the one I often talk about is minimum break requirements. And I'm calling it a self-care rule today for a specific reason. I want you to think about yourself as if you were another human who was employed by you. So you've got boss you and employee you. Even if you're a one-person show, that doesn't matter. Boss you, employee you. Okay? You can even give employee you a special name. Let's call them unicorn. So you've got you, the boss, and unicorn. Now, doesn't unicorn deserve breaks periodically? In fact, isn't it a legal requirement that unicorn gets breaks every certain amount of time? Yes it is. But we often don't give it to ourselves. And it's not fair. You have to look after yourself because otherwise you're not going to be the excellent teacher that I know you want to be. So in my studio, I have a rule about breaks. The rule is that we have a break of at least 15 minutes every 2.5 hours or 4 students, whichever comes first. 2.5 hours or 4 students, whichever comes first. So if you had 4 30-minute lessons, you would get a break after 2 hours, right? Now, we often do breaks even slightly shorter amount of time than that. Even more frequently than that. It just depends on how the schedule works out, but that is the absolute maximum that anyone is allowed to work in a row. Because when they hit hour 3, they are just not as good a teacher to that student as they were to the first student. That's my experience of my own teaching, and I think it would be the same for any other teacher who works here. Now, if you have a different personal preference and style of teaching and whatever, that's fine. But just be honest with yourself. Are you giving yourself the space, the time that you deserve? Are you looking after yourself? And think about this in other ways too. Like, maybe it isn't breaks for you. Maybe it's a maximum number of students. But if there's something that you tend to push your own boundaries on, that you think, hey, I wouldn't do this to my employee unicorn, well then set a hard and fast rule. And make sure there's no leeway to it. It's not, oh, I'll try and do this. It's this, therefore this. It's been 2.5 hours, therefore there is a break now in the schedule. And that helps me, certainly, when I'm putting together the timetable, not to just sort of go overboard with something. Because in my timetable, it's just a little Excel cell that I'm adding on. And it doesn't look like a big deal, but in reality, I'm going to be dehydrated from talking too much for 3 hours, or tired, or just less enthusiastic for that last student. So it might not be breaks for you, but is there something you need to set a rule about as if you were your own employee? Here's our last clue. And this is an odd one. Okay, our last change I want you to consider is implementing some systems. So we have a course inside Vibrant Music Teaching that is called Smooth Studio Systems. And largely that is how I operate my studio. I use a task management tool called ClickUp. But in that course, we also cover how to use Asana if you'd prefer to use that. Works very similarly. Basically, it involves setting up repeatable systems because we do the same things in our studio every year. And what I found in my first several years of teaching was I would reinvent the wheel every year. Like I would rediscover all the things I needed to do to prepare for a recital. And it was just pointless. They were the same tasks. And it would have taken me a lot less time if I already had the task mapped out. Because the actual doing with something like that is not as much as the oh, I need to do this, oh, and then that, oh, and then that. Whereas if you have it all laid out, you can do it in the most logical order and also not think about it when you're not supposed to be doing anything for it. I think you know what I mean, yes? Where we're just running through things in our brain again and again. Oh yeah, I have to remember the camera, but I already put the camera in my bag. Do I have my camera? No. If it's all in a list and it's all laid out and you've adjusted it the previous year, you don't have those conversations with yourself and it saves you a lot of mental accounting time. So this is a bigger change really, but you can start small. If you are a member of Vibrant Music Teaching, if you're not, that's where you can sign up, vibrantmusicteaching.com. But if you are already a member, you can just take that course and see where you could start with this. What's one repeated thing that happens every year periodically, every month, doesn't matter how frequently, that you could set up a repeating series of tasks that you do it the same way every time. What is one thing that's like that? Or, alternative to setting up the systems in this way, with like the task management, if you don't currently have an email series that goes out to new parents, or a way to automate emails, to set up a bunch of email reminders, say, for certain things happening in your studio in one go, we have another course for that. That's Essential Email Templates. And it includes instructions on how to set up the free email platform MailerLite for your studio so that you can set it up, and it just saves you so much time if you can schedule these things in bulk. For instance, like all the bank holiday Mondays that happen in Ireland, where we take the Saturday and the Monday off those weekends, I set those all up at the start of the year. So I know that everyone is going to be reminded on the Tuesday before the Saturday and Monday that there are no lessons then. And I don't have to think about it and do it on the fly. And that saves so much mental space. Okay, I'm going to run through the comments and see what changes we want to make. And I also welcome questions. I'm going to come back to all the sort of general questions in a moment. But yeah, I want to catch up with all of everything that's going on. Oh my gosh, what a busy chat today. Okay, so save that question for a minute. Oh yeah, glad you're enjoying the concept collection, Sandra. That's awesome. Oh, and thank you for that comment, Nancy. I really appreciate you being a member. Best subscription you've ever subscribed to. That is an enormous compliment. Thank you so much. We work very hard to make that happen, and I'm glad it's true for you. And thank you, Carrie, as well. Glad it's worth it for you. And Rocio as well. So this fall, you're going to be raising your rates, Carrie. That's awesome. Changing the makeup policy. Right, so you got 2 out of my 5. Right there. Check, check. You're doing great. Recital in May instead of June. Yeah, little tweaks like that can make a big difference. I do my recital in May already. I've considered moving it from May, to be honest, but there's nowhere else to put it. But yeah, bringing in a new thing to do in June, like a party to wrap up the term, is really fun. Yes, makeup lessons are absolutely the worst. Lots of agreement there. Denise, you're going to try a buddy lesson format for a teenage student. Fantastic. And going to add the no makeup lesson policy. Oh my gosh, best of luck with the change. It just doesn't work. No, it doesn't. And even if you are out there, someone else, and your studio is not full, that doesn't mean, and your schedule is not full. Like maybe you have a really free lifestyle. That's your prerogative. Like if you have this wonderful free timetable, it doesn't mean that you have to make up these lessons just because your only plan was to go for a walk. If you plan to go for a walk, you go for a walk. They didn't reserve that spot. Okay? Okay. Let me see. If only all studios operated in a united front, parents and students wouldn't be able to cite other studios who offer reschedules, which all of us would change our policies. Okay, yeah, but let's just change the things we can change, I guess, and try to keep it as positively framed for ourselves as possible. Because the thing is, there are plenty of teachers around me who reschedule lessons. They reschedule lessons themselves as well, to be fair, so lessons are just moving constantly. And that doesn't make parents ask me for reschedules. So I think if we take a very specific, this is how it works, line to it, it normally isn't a deal breaker. And if it is, that parent is just not for you. Okay, yeah, everybody is strapped, but so will you be. So the prices are going up. But you are also a person. That's my argument with the inflation thing. I know it's tempting as a teacher, and I know often teachers' first instinct is, oh, but everyone else. And I get it, Mary. I do. And it is true. It is tough for everyone. But it's tough for you too. And even if it's not right now, like all the prices are going up everywhere. People have to deal with that in their own way. We can't put all of that on our shoulders. Interesting, Sandra. I made this change years ago, but I've noticed since COVID that parents are asking for makeup lessons anyway. So in my registration letter, I'm emphasizing the no makeup lesson policy. Yeah, and every time they do ask for it, just give a simple answer. Don't budge, though. Yep. Every single year. It really does make a huge difference because then it's never a big jump. And it's expected. Parents don't expect my rates to stay the same. They just never do. Yeah, that's a great option. So some students send videos on which I comment if they need to miss a lesson. That's great because you can do that. I mean, you could do it when you want to, but they're not taking this extra time from your schedule. You could do that during their regular lesson slot or rearrange it to suit you. So like if you want to do it at 9 a.m., that's fine, but they wouldn't have been able to reschedule their lesson to 9 a.m. So it's making it work for you. Oh my gosh, fantastic. I've made this change to no makeups and have a list of options for students and parents. A couple of families have complained. A couple of them might complain. That's absolutely true. But thank you for that feedback, Lindsay. Most just accept it. Great feedback from Mary. No one complains because that's how it's worded in my enrollment. I had one person complain, but they only took lessons 7 weeks anyway. Yeah, they'll usually be the outlier. And alongside putting it in the enrollment, I actually say it straight up to parents at the first meeting that I organise with them before we start lessons. I say, look, we can't reschedule lessons. Here's what we do instead. So right from the out, I'm not glossing over anything. I'm not hiding anything. There are no surprises. And when I explain it to them in that lesson, no one says, oh, really? They all say, yeah, oh, yeah, of course you couldn't reschedule. Because they're not in that mindset yet of, I need to reschedule now. So it's great to get it out ahead of it like that, I find. So hard in a small rural area where there's one other teacher locally that is already less expensive, but I know I offer a lot more. Yeah, look, we do have to play to the market that we're in, and we can't price ourselves out to the point where no one is looking for lessons with us. However, often when we raise our rates, we just attract different people. So it does depend on the market. Okay, I'm going to get back to everything that started with the word question. So if you didn't type your question starting with the word question, feel free to do that now. Just write question at the start of it so I don't miss it. Juliet asked, I think you had a recital once that featured students' compositions and arrangement, and you gave it a great title. Can you remember what it was? As I plan to do something similar. Okay, I think what you're thinking of is the January Jam. Does that strike a chord, Juliet? No pun intended. It wasn't compositions, it was student improv and arrangements. But maybe that's what you're thinking of. Otherwise, you might be thinking of like a composing thing I did, because there's no other recital I can think of like that. But that was a January Jam anyway. Juliet also asked, one of my challenges on my new poster are called Rhythm Apprentice. What do your students do for this? For me, well, before I get there, there is an overview sheet for all the challenges, Juliet. So if you haven't downloaded that, I highly recommend you do, because it just lays them all out in a very simple format so you can look at them. You're welcome to use any of them, the terms, in your own way, but that outlines what they mean to me. So that's on the page where all the challenge posters are, but it's just a separate download. It's called an overview PDF. But for Rhythm Apprentice specifically, or the 3 rhythm challenges in general, I base those off of being able to do the rhythm railroads. So for apprentice, correct me if I'm wrong when you look at the PDF later, but I think I said that at level 2. So it's 1 and 2 for apprentice, and then 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. Yeah. Simple to answer that. Yes, I do. Every single year. Every year. How would you recommend offering or changing formats from one-on-one lessons to buddy lessons with current students? Okay, This is something I actually went through with one of the clients in our coaching program we recently did, which was called Accelerate. And it was great to go through that process. It's something I know many teachers want to do, but there's kind of different stages to setting that up and putting everything in place. The sort of Cliff Notes version I'll give you for now, Carrie, which is, number one, check out the article which is called How to Make Any Change in Your Piano Teaching Studio. So that's on the blog. I think you can get to it by going to colourfulkeys.ie/change. Let me test that out for you. But it sort of comes in 3 stages, and that's talked through in that article, which is you talk it up in a sort of general way, like this cool thing is happening, and you do that to parents and students. Then you make the announcement, which is again all just about the fun. And then you say, here's what's happening, here's where you sign up for next year, to make people actually commit to it. Yeah, I found the link for you, so that's going in the chat for you. And what email series do I send to parents regularly? So if you check out the Essential Email Templates course, the new parent email sequence is in there. Pretty much it's exactly that, slightly modified for my own studio, but it's based on that series. Mary asked, what are the top 5 fun activities to incorporate into summer lessons while still covering a little repertoire? Okay, top 5. This is fun. Fun to come up with fun activities. Number 1, if you don't already play music theory games or you don't get as much time to do it as you'd like, you could make that an every lesson thing during the summer. If you're in that kind of climate, maybe you even take it and have the space to do it. Maybe you even take that outside, like onto the porch or something for the theory game, and then back inside. Might help with the summer restlessness. So that's 1. Number 2, playing by ear. So you could use our course called Ear Elevator for that, or any song that a student wants to learn, like a pop song. Do a little bit of playing by ear in every lesson, and you can just do tiny chunks of a song. And it could take the whole summer to learn like the verse of one song, but that'd be fine. So just a little bit at a time. And some students will be really into that and they'll carry on at home. Number 3, if you don't already improvise in every lesson, that's an all year thing for me for sure. But if it's not for you, maybe you improvise at the start of every lesson. So I'm still not taking up too much lesson time. You have time for repertoire left over. Number 4, let's see. If you don't normally have time to let students put their own creative stamp on a piece, now would be a great time to do that. So they could go back to an older piece that they already learnt and like recompose a section of it, or change the left hand, modify it in some way, transpose it, just mess around with it. You could do that with slightly older pieces or with current pieces they're working on. And let's see, number 5, I would say some kind of a movement-based rhythm warm-up, if you don't always get time for that. Again, summer tends to be a little bit more restless for a lot of kiddos, so getting them up and moving in the middle of working on a specific piece would be really helpful. I need to add an administration fee, otherwise I have to raise rates a lot more than I want. Never added this fee before. What would the best way to do so? So I call mine a registration fee, probably the same thing that you're trying to do. So what my registration fee does is it reserves their spot in the schedule and goes towards the cost of materials for the year, since I include all books and folders and anything else they might need. So you may or may not want to include everything in your studio and go to an all-inclusive policy at the time. I'm just mentioning that as an option. But a lot of parents really expect a registration fee when they're signing up for something. So I think the best way to implement it is bring your enrollment forward. If you don't currently get students to enroll in like July for September or something like that, then do that. And the registration fee is attached to the enrollment. Or the administration fee, whatever you want to call it, is attached to the enrollment. And then they have their regular fees in September. So it splits them apart and they can clearly see, okay, I'm saving my spot in the schedule. Hopefully that gives you a starting point for that. Linda asked, when you do a 30-piece challenge, how many weeks do you run it for? I've never actually done 30 pieces, so I have done a 40-piece challenge. I only put in the 30-piece and 20-piece options for those challenges at members' request. But for 40 pieces, it's a year. It's a full academic year. Hopefully that helps. So that requires students to be learning a mix of things at their level, well below their level, slightly easier. You need a mix of levels to make that work. And that's really part of the motivation behind the original challenge, which was created by Alyssa Milne. So if you look up her info on it, I think it's good to get the background on where it came from and the fact that it really came out of the fact her students were learning a lot of pieces, and a lot of the teachers around her or in her music teacher association or whatever group she was in were surprised by how much repertoire her students were learning. So this was a way of framing it to say they learn about this a year, and how we do that is multiple levels of repertoire, because that's what makes her a really strong reader. At what point do you start using the sight reading railroad with students? For example, ones in Piano Safari. So in general, we don't use reading railroad with Piano Safari students because they have the reading cards. I will use the reading railroad if we don't want to use the reading cards from Piano Safari. So if that's the case, at what level do we start? You would start level 1 when they enter unit 3 of Piano Safari 1. So reading railroad 1 would equate to unit 3 of Piano Safari 1, and you could keep going from there if you want to do it as an alternative to the reading cards. If you're doing it as well, I think it's probably too much sight reading, to be honest. But if you have students in a different series, again, think about, okay, at what point can they sort of read steps? And then start reading railroad at level 1 at that point and work through the series from there as your sight reading component. Judy, that's not what I clicked on. Okay. Judy asked, my younger students are loving the rhythm train. What do you suggest for older students? I'm not sure what you mean by rhythm train, because, there's rhythm railroad. So is it that? Or do you mean, what's that one called? I've forgotten the name of one of our games. That's like, I don't think it's called Rhythm Train though. It's called something else. The name is escaping me right now. Rhythm Railway, maybe even, which is like train carriages on cards. So if you mean that, it's different from if you mean Rhythm Railroad. I'm going to answer the Rhythm Railroad one first, because that I would definitely do with all levels, for sure. All ages, sorry. Even adults can do that. There's nothing kiddie about doing this. It's fine. Like, just do it with any age. And if you do have students that are a bit like, about it, just say, I know it looks a bit kiddie, but it's the best way to learn, and it's more fun this way anyway. Just laugh it off together and keep going. Rachel, how do you deal with students that have a keyboard with unweighted keys and aren't financially able to upgrade? Okay. The tough answer to this is if they can afford lessons, they can afford a weighted keyboard. I'm sorry that I'm not answering that in a more gentle way, but that is kind of the truth. Like, how can they afford lessons if they can't afford that? I know maybe they're just about paying for lessons. I'm just saying, in some cases, they would be better off pausing lessons until they can get a weighted keyboard. But you can definitely make suggestions, like for them to look on like the buy and sell pages, whatever's relevant where you are. We have like adverts is one of ours, or Done Deal. You'll have different sites like that where you are, or like Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups, local groups like that sometimes have buy and sell kind of things going on. So take a look at those, but don't do all the research for them. Say, okay, if you really like, I understand it might cost a lot to get one new, but keep an eye on these pages, and if you see anything that has weighted keys pop up, like jump on it, or they can get a secondhand piano. There really are a lot of options to get something for, say, $200-$300. And again, if you really can't afford that, how are they paying for lessons? Maybe they are paying for lessons some other way. I know also, Rachel, I can't remember where you are. if I scroll up, I would see, are you in Canada? I know in America, there's Music Link Foundation, which does help students source instruments. So that's something to look into, maybe as an options. Okay. Right, I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions. I didn't start with question because we have to choose a winner and wrap up I have a lesson. Oh my gosh. It's been a longer show today, which is really fun. But we have to give these away, which is also fun. Okay, I'm going to scroll in the chat and not look at it. I'm going to look at my skylight. You ready? We're scrolling, we're scrolling, we're scrolling, we're scrolling. And I've landed here. Oh, nice. Okay. These are for you. So just say, yeah, in the chat, and they will be going to you. And then you just need to email us, support@vibrantmusicteaching.com, support@vibrantmusicteaching.com. Put it in the chat now with the address that you want that sent to, and we'll be happy to send them over. So yeah, let us know what address you want it sent to. And if you're still here, hopefully you're still here. Otherwise I'll pick someone else. Yes, you are. Yay. You're very welcome. Delighted to be able to give that away to you. Okay, so to remind you, we are off now for a couple of months. So there's no show, or 3 months. There's no show in June, July, or August. We'll be back in September. We will still have... Oh, nice. Yeah, we'll pop that in the same order. Just let us... Yeah. You don't need to email me then. No worries. So we do have regular videos coming out every single week. There's also the webinar coming up in August, so make sure you watch out for that. And make sure you watch out in July. Like, follow us on social media, whatever is your favorite social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Because in July, I have a really fun announcement. I'm going to give you one teaser, and then we're going to wrap up the show. This is my teaser. Let's see if we can show up. Okay, do you see the bottom, this corner, this side? That right there. That's your teaser. See if you can guess what it is. But that is coming out in July. Can't give you an exact date yet, but if you watch out for that, it is something amazing. And there's going to be a special deal for those who are really new in to the new thing, which I won't give a name. Okay, thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a wonderful last show of this academic year. I hope you have a fabulous summer. I'm sure I'll see you around and about, most of you, but if I don't, have an amazing summer. If you're coming to the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy in Chicago, NCKP, if you're coming to that, please come find me. Please don't leave that conference without saying hello to me. I would love to meet you there. And if you remember, we have something special for you at our booth too, so make sure to come over and get that. You're not going to want to miss it. And yes, have a fabulous summer. I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.